Welcome and good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Cartman, the Director of Religious Education here at Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church in Houston, Texas. Our beloved community of faith, reason, and affection welcomes all to grow in mind and spirit as together we build a better world. If you are joining with us for the first time this morning, we extend a special welcome and invite you to fill out our online visitor card so you can receive more information about Emerson and our activities. Again, welcome to all. Today, Bill Hammonds, a member of Emerson's worship team, leads our service, with support from me, worship team member Ken McLeod, and Emersonian Dory Wolf on the tech deck. You'll notice that we've muted you. This helps all of us to hear the service better, and we encourage you to use the chat box. Following the worship service, we'll have coffee hour time, a chance for you to gather in smaller groups to discuss the service and what's going on in your lives.
Happy Independence Day, everyone. We appreciate you taking a few moments out of your holiday to join us for this service. Summertime has officially begun, and today is a holiday on top of that. So this service will look and feel a little bit different than our usual services. Let's kick it off with Aretha Franklin singing America.
Treaties of the sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. And where my father died, land of the pilgrim's pride,
Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here.
Every Sunday, Unitarian Universalists around the country, around the world, take time to light a chalice, the symbol of our common faith. Please join me at home with your own chalices, whatever they might be, and reading the words on the screen. May the light of truth illumine our minds. May the spark of love set our hearts on fire. May the flame of freedom burn brightly within us, now and always. Our opening hymn is We Sing Now Together, number 67 in the Gray Hymnal. It's a familiar hymn, but more commonly associated with Thanksgiving. It's a beautiful hymn with a patriotic feel, and the lyrics are well suited for a day of celebration and renewal of our mutual commitment to freedom and equality. Interestingly, the hymn tune is derived in part from a 17th century Dutch patriotic hymn celebrating Dutch freedom from Spanish rule. Please join in singing We Sing Now Together.
We sing now together a song of thanksgiving, rejoicing in goods which our ages have wrought, for life that enfolds us and helps and heals and holds us, and leads beyond the goals which our forebears once sought. We sing of the freedoms which martyrs and heroes have won by their labor, their sorrow, their pain, the oppressed befriending, our ampler hopes defending, their death becomes a triumph, they died not in vain. We sing of the prophets, the teachers, the dreamers, designers, creators, and workers and seers, our own lives expanding, our gratitude commanding, their deeds have made immortal their days and their years. We sing of community now in the making, in every far continent, region, and land, with those of all races, all times and names and places, we pledge ourselves in covenant firmly to stand.
Instead of a story today, we're going to have a kind of a show and tell combined with a riddle. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of my paternal grandparents and tell you a bit about them. See if you can figure out what I find interesting about them and relevant to the theme of American history. This first photograph is a hand-colored portrait of my father's parents, Henry Larkin Hammonds and Elizabeth Carolyn Patterson Hammonds. It's the only photograph I have of him and only one of a handful of photos that I have of her. As I was working on this service, I remembered the one thing that I think I know about my grandfather. When he was a child, the family moved from Alabama to northern Louisiana, and he would tell the story that he knew that he had walked halfway from Alabama to Louisiana because one day he would ride the mule and the next day his brother would ride the mule. The photograph was taken in 1932, a couple of years after they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. On the back, there's a stamped metal plaque that states in part, "This is an heirloom portrait of Mr. and Mrs. H.L. Hammonds, made from a photograph taken in the year 1932 and faithfully portrayed by the artist in a manner and quality befitting a work to be passed on to future generations as a priceless heirloom, done at the studios of Chicago Portrait Company." And here's the original photo for comparison. You'll note that the artist has taken a few liberties, notably moving Henry and Elizabeth, Lizzie, closer together, placing her a bit lower in the frame to suggest a bigger difference in their heights, and giving Henry a dapper necktie. The date stamped on the back, 1932, is significant. Henry died in November of that same year. My guess is that after his death, Lizzie and her children gathered up the best photo they had of the couple and sent it to the Chicago Portrait Company to be transformed into a formal portrait. The hand-colored portrait may indeed be a faithful portrayal by the artist, but the original photo reveals more about their living situation. Here we have Henry and Lizzie standing stoically in front of a gate, presumably on their farm in Grant Parish, Louisiana, where they made their home and raised a family for over 50 years. It's a couple of years into the Great Depression at this point. Family records indicate that Lizzie gave birth to 8 children, not an unusual number for that time and place, although only 6 survived into adulthood. Census records confirm that by 1930, their children had grown up and left home, although a married daughter lived close by. Have you figured out what I find noteworthy about these ancestors? The answer lies in the dates that I mentioned. If you've done some quick mental math, you may have already figured out that both Henry and Lizzie were alive during the Civil War. Henry was born in 1859, so he lived through the entire conflict. Lizzie was born in late 1861, just a few months after the start of the war. I just think it's kind of a fun piece of family history, and it just reminds us of how young our nation actually is. If anyone else has an unusual or noteworthy family connection, I'd love to hear about it.
Giving out of what is our own is a transformative act. As a community of faith, we collect an offering, not for ourselves or our congregation, but to give to others as a collective action of our community and as a way to live out our shared values. Please give with a generous heart to support July Share the Plate recipients, the Women's Home. The Women's Home provides housing assistance, residential treatment, and collaborative community services to prepare women and their families to become empowered and productive forces in their communities. And as always, 25% of your offering will go to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, feeding Houston seniors. We have 3 ways you can contribute. You can text the number on the screen, go to our webpage for online giving, or if you prefer to mail a check, yes, your staff is still checking the mail at church.
Long Walk to Freedom, the autobiography of Nelson Mandela. I've walked that long road to freedom. I've tried not to falter. I've made missteps along the way. But I've discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I've taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance I've come. But I can only rest for a moment, for with freedom come responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not ended.
Today is the 245th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the event marking the founding of our nation. It's a day for celebration and also for reflection. The preamble to the Declaration of Independence declares, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The shot heard round the world had already been fired and the war with England was on. The 56 signers of that document surely knew that by affixing their signatures, they were risking their very lives and fortunes. Then, in the summer of 1787, the framers of the Constitution hammered out this language: "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Their words were idealistic, but the process of establishing a new nation in an imperfect world was not done perfectly. Benjamin Franklin alluded to this in his final address to the Constitutional Convention in 1787. He said, in part, "I agree to this Constitution with all its faults, if they are such. I doubt whether any other convention we can obtain may be able to make a better Constitution. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their local interests, and their selfish views. From such an assembly can a perfect production be expected? It therefore astonishes me to find this system approaching so near to perfection as it does." Franklin concluded his remarks by urging the members to sign their names to the Constitution, and indeed it was ultimately adopted. In theory, the states were united, but in reality, the national structure was fragile. Notably, as we know, there were intense debates over slavery, which eventually led to the Civil War. That brings us to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which he delivered in November 1863. The Civil War had been raging for about 2.5 years when President Lincoln delivered this brief address. Consider the thoughts that must have been going through his mind with the nation fighting a bloody war with itself. Let's listen once again to Lincoln's remarks with fresh ears.
Our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We're met on a great battlefield of that war. We've come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate. We cannot consecrate. We cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
One phrase from the Gettysburg Address jumps out at me as this: the unfinished work which they do, let me start again. The unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. The unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. Indeed, the work remains unfinished. Today, 158 years after Lincoln's address, the internal conflicts within our nation are once again at a fever pitch, to the point that it seems our very democracy is at risk. Just 6 months ago, our government survived an attempted insurrection. These are perilous times for our republic. We Americans have much to be proud of, so by all means, let's celebrate. I'll particularly celebrate freedom of speech and freedom of religion today. The lofty words of our founders, in order to form a more perfect union, still have the power to inspire us, as well as others around the world who are yearning to breathe free. Over the past 245 years, our nation has gradually granted rights to those who the founders didn't intend to include when they spoke of all men. Through the amendment process, our Constitution has become the protector of the rights of all the people, not just some of the people. It's a stronger, better document than it was when it initially emerged from the Philadelphia Convention. We continue to work toward forming a more perfect union. I sincerely hope that each of us takes Lincoln's words to heart and renews our determination that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Please join with me in singing our closing hymn, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning." It's number 153 in the Great Hymnal.
This morning with my mind,
and it was
stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind, and it was
I'll leave you with a few final thoughts. Most of you have heard the anecdote that upon leaving the final day of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, after the Constitution was adopted, Benjamin Franklin was asked by a woman, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." In digging a bit deeper, I learned that the woman who asked Franklin the question that prompted his memorable reply was Elizabeth Willing Powell, a woman with political savvy and impeccable political connections. Her father served as mayor of Philadelphia, as did her husband, twice. But it seems that she was the acknowledged political thinker in the marriage. She hosted frequent gatherings that became a staple of political life in the city of Philadelphia. The Powells were close friends with George and Martha Washington. When President Washington expressed doubts about serving a second term in office, she wrote to him advising him to continue for a second term. And finally, I'll leave you with the eloquent words of abolitionist Frederick Douglass. "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." Amen, and blessed be.
Let us extinguish our chalice, taking our joy, our hope, our courage into the world. Thank you to Bill for sharing this service with us today. Next Sunday, our guest speaker will be the Reverend John Pepper. Those of you who were at Emerson 15 or 20 years ago may remember John from before the time he enrolled in divinity school. His sermon topic will be "All are called, but not everyone listens." We hope that you'll dial in, screen in, whatever we do these days. Our postlude today is the Star-Spangled Banner, performed by Lady Gaga, accompanied by the United States Marine Corps Band.